cyfarfod yma, felly croeso i hynny. Unrhyw un yn datgan buddiant a unrhyw eitem ar yr agenda, sgwch yn dda, unrhyw un. Os ydych chi angen offer cyfieithu, mae'r offer cyfieithu yn gweithio o'r yna ac addaswch. Ie, offer cyfieithu'n gweithio'n iawn. Gobeithio. Ie, ydych chi wedi defnyddio offer cyfieithu o blaen? Falle? Ni roi chydig bach o amser i bawb ddod i arfer efo'r offer. Ie, popeth yn iawn. Diolch Diane. Angen sicrhau bod pob dim yn gweithio'n iawn. Ardderchog, unrhyw un eisiau datgan buddiant ar unrhyw fater meithrin yma. Nag oes, diolch yn fawr iawn. Cofnodion y cyfarfod blaenorol sydd yn mynd yn ôl i mis Mawrth blynedd. Oedd rai ohonyn ni yma. Bryd hynny, nid pawb. Ond rhai oedd yma. Nid pawb oedd yma yn derbyn. Gareth?
Yeah, I think the minute's fine, but I did have a matter that I just which probably 21, 22. It's easy to use. But actually, there wasn't a loss in the portfolio, and there has been a loss this year. So I just wondered whether that was accurate. I can't remember to us, so that was what was reported at the time, or whether there's a muddle in the minutes. Because it occurred to me in 2021 there probably was a big loss because I know markets took a nosedive with COVID. So yeah, just a bit perplexed by that.
So the question, a good question to ask, was that's reflected in the minutes accurate, or is it a mistake in the minutes?
Yeah, that's right.
So who knows the answer to that? I'm looking at people who weren't here. Carol wasn't here.
Well, I'm quite happy to leave it outside the meeting, but could we just check, because it's important, it's accurate. I mean, it may be just that we had missed not the right information from the advisors about the portfolio, but it seems a bit unlikely that late in the year.
I'll just check with Kirsty in case she knows the answer.
Yeah, I was there, and there was a discussion around it, and it was around the previous year rather than this
year.
Yes. So maybe it's the way that it's been written
Okay.
in there. So maybe we can change that for accuracy.
Let's double check that and get it recorded correctly then. Okay, diolch yn iawn. Ar wan ydyn ni hapus i dderbyn cofnod. Pawb yn hapus. Ie. Diolch yn iawn. Y cyfrifon blynyddol a'r adroddiad blynyddol, dwi am droi gyntaf, ti eisiau mynd gyntaf, dyfod fel cadeirydd y pwyllgor LSN sy'n edrych ar y maes yma, a sy'n gwneud gwaith pwysig iawn, felly droi at dyfod fel cadeirydd gyntaf. Diolch yn iawn.
Diolch, cadeirydd. Dwi jyst eisiau deud chydig eiriau ar y cychwyn fel hyn. Dwi'n meddwl y peth bwysig dwi eisiau gwneud ydy diolch i'r tîm am y gwaith sydd wedi digwydd i baratoi yr cyfrifon yma a hefyd i baratoi yr adroddiad blynyddol. Mae yna waith pwysig iawn di mynd i mewn i'r rhain, dan maen nhw'n cael eu cyflwyno fel drafft i chi heddiw. Mi fyddai'n gofyn, mae Russell a mae Kirsty yn mynd i tywys chi trwyddyn nhw yn sydyn, a bydd yna gyfle am gwestiynau wedyn. Dwi'n gwybod pwy da ni'n mynd, Russ, if I come to you first on the annual accounts, os gwelwch yna, diolch.
Diolch yn iawn. Over to you, Russ.
Deal, Chair. I think I would open by saying, obviously, a 12-month gap between us meeting. I think it's really important we meet as trustees, so we'll try to do that as a minimum of 2 years, as 2 meetings as we progress through the current calendar year. Really important as well to note that Audit Wales were in attendance and presenting their findings on the audit of the accounts to the Charitable Funds Committee. They are awaiting confirmation of an external report, controls assurance report through Brewing Dolphin. We are in the same position as 4 other health boards, and upon receipt of that report, then we will move to receive our unqualified audit opinion and be able to file our account submission. There is still active conversations going on with Audit Wales, so we haven't missed the deadline yet. But it's just to make members aware that we are awaiting that conclusion. In terms of the accounts themselves, if I take you through the highlights of that way. So just looking at an annualised comparison, so 21-22, we did secure £2.8 million worth of income. As we move into the 22-23 year, that has reduced to 1.9 million. So we do need to keep the focus in terms of encouraging donations, and Kirsty's doing a fabulous job of trying to drum those donations up. But donations and legacies, I think that's not an uncommon trend within charitable organisations, unfortunately. So we just need to be mindful of the conditions and the climate we're operating within, but keep a watchful eye and making sure that we can maintain our income base. In terms of expenditure, we only spent 1.4 million last year, so we didn't actually use all our donations in year. We actually increased our portfolio, and clearly our ambition is to utilise the funds that are donated to us for our patients, not to keep them in the bank. So I think it's being mindful that this is a really good use of resource that we can tap into to try and make those patient experiences really successful. So members just need to be sighted and mindful of that as we work through the organisation. We have increased our spend in the current financial year that we're reporting on, although it seems strange that we're talking about 22-23, of course, when we're in 24. But it's gone up to 1.8 million. So we have done lots of initiatives, and Kirsty will talk about some of those. And we have colleagues here today who benefited from some of those donations that wish to share their story as well, which would be great. I will accurately report this time in the minutes that unfortunately the portfolio has had a loss in the year. So this time we actually in year have lost £0.7 million. Again, that's due to market fluctuations. Recent reports have indicated that is starting to recover. So we have had improved and move that valuation back up. If you were to combine those 2 years together with what's happened since close the accounts, we've probably recovered the deficit, but we're only in balance, and we need to be making a return if we're putting significant sums to one side. We will be looking at the investment reserve strategy so that we're very clear. We always take a medium-term view in terms of our risk appetite around investments. That's because we tend to spend roughly circa £1 to £2 million a year, and we currently have circa £10 million in the fund. So it's not like we need that resource. We might need to change that policy as we go forward as trustees. If, for example, there was something really big that we wanted to use the charitable funds for, just to make sure that we're not taking our funds out of that portfolio at a time when the market is in depression, because then we will realise that loss. And at the moment, it's an unrealised loss, i.e. we've just got a book value loss, and we expect the valuation to increase back up again. So with that, our portfolio in the prior year grew £1.7 million, grew to 12.3 million as a balance. Unfortunately, during the current year, with those unrealised losses, we've moved to a £500,000 loss in year. So our portfolio is slightly reduced to £11.8 million. As I say, we're trying to recover those losses through our investment portfolio. We do believe the markets will fluctuate, and over the longer term will give us the return that we're after. As a consequence, we would maintain the portfolio and the model that we've currently got. That's as much as I was going to say on the accounts, Chair, if that's okay. But I know Kirsty wants to talk more about the annual report itself, and through some of those elements of that good work that we've been doing.
Thank you very much indeed, Ren.
Kirsty?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I know that you've all read the annual report, and so just to highlight really that some of those stories of the supporters and what they've achieved through 2022-23 are really are incredible. And we could only obviously take a snapshot of the activity that happened during the year. What's been achieved as a result of their hard work, I think, is even more achievable in terms of the impact that those donations and that fundraising that they've done has made. If you go on the Our Last social media channels, you'll be able to see, or indeed on BetsyNet, you'll be able to see much more of the impact stories that we weren't able to include in the annual report. But there really are some really impressive stories there of how new equipment, extra training, etc., has really made a difference. That impact is made possible thanks to our staff, thanks to BCUHB staff across all of our hospitals and indeed our community services, who decide what they think is best for patients. And as well as that, they also encourage people within our communities and beyond, organisations from beyond, to support the charity as well. So a huge thank you needs to go to all staff who've got involved over the past, I'd say over the past year, obviously in 2022, 23 as well, and especially those fund advisors who play such an integral role of overseeing the funds on the trustees' behalf as well. I wanted to highlight some supporters who gave in 2022-23 who deserve a very special mention. We had the Gwynedd Haematology and Cancer Relief Fund, who gave £92,000 as they wound up the independent charity that they'd actually established 25 years before. That wonderful group, I called them the founding fathers. They were a wonderful group of former consultants who had launched an appeal many years ago to get the Allow unit established, and they continue to support them right up to last year, and they remain very close as we move forward in deciding how their significant donation will make a difference moving forward. Another fundraising group who was established at a similar time, this one a ladies group, also donated over £40,000. These are significant donations which help make a huge difference, as you're well aware. We don't mention in the charitable in the charities accounts our charitable partners, but I wanted to pay recognition to them today as well. So our Leagues of Friends, MVS, Shooting Star Cancer Support, these individual organisations, these independent organisations who give directly to the health board rather than through the charity. We work very, very closely with these different groups as well. And over a year pre-pandemic, they were giving over £1 million collectively to the organisation to fund equipment in the different hospitals that they serve. They really do make an incredible difference, also through volunteering and through adding to our patient experience. So we're very grateful to them as well for giving time and giving money. Within Our Last, we also have some specific funds which have very much their own identity and which are very much led by volunteer committees. Those include the North Wales Cancer Appeal and the Ysbyty Glan-Clwyd Friends of Renal Care. So we also want to pay tribute to them for all of the hard work that they do as well. I thought it'd be useful to just mention some of the things that we've been doing over the past year since we met as well. We've obviously got a new charitable funds committee in place led by Dyfed and by Russ, and I'd really like to thank on behalf of the team who I know are streaming in, if that's what we call it, really pay tribute to all of the charitable funds committee for getting up to speed so quickly on what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and what the needs of both our colleagues and our patients, as well as our supporters are. So a huge thank you to all of you. The team, we are currently a team of around 3.5. When compared to Hywel Dda with 9 staff members, it's slightly different, but we're able to do what we do thanks to the huge amount of support that we get from colleagues in communications teams and across the health board. But a huge thank you to Paula, Amy and Elena for all the work that they did on this annual report and the accounts, and the support that's also provided by Bethan and Andrea from finance and from Becky in Helen's team as well. This year, over the past year, some of you will be aware already that RVS closed its or stopped Ysbyty Gwynedd and Ysbyty Glan Clwyd. So we took on that service and the 90 volunteers that are part of that service. So we do have 2 additional new staff members, Wendy and Nick, who have really enjoyed becoming part of the BCUHB family, as have all of the volunteers. So huge thanks to them as well for everything that they have done over the past 6 months since joining us. Russ explained that for the most part, the reason why our donations or our income is down in 2022-23 was in large part due to the legacy income. Our legacies were 70% lower than the previous year. There are many reasons for that, but we still continue to receive legacies as a result of people wanting to really show their gratitude to staff. And so I'd like to just end, if I may, just to think about what our collective legacy will be in terms of encouraging people to give time and give money, because as you can see from the report that was presented to you today, it really does make a huge difference. Thank you very much indeed. I will be passing over to these guys, but I think that the chair will do that for you.
Diolch yn iawn. Ac yn troi at gyfeillion am cyflwyniad. Falle unrhyw gwestiynau, ti'n iawn i cymryd cwestiynau rwan, Kirsty? Ti'n iawn? Unrhyw sylwadau, ti'n cwestiynau, ti'n gwybod gen Gareth, Mike a Rhian. So, Gareth, Mike, Rhian.
Very briefly, just to say, I think it's a really excellent annual report. So congratulations to you and all the staff. It's really informative, it's interesting, it's lively, so it's really good. I just got one, well, I think I know the answer, but just for clarity. So I think it's really good, the amount of devolution you do and involving the individual wards. But I just wanted to be clear that the 449 individual funds, they're not actually financially held separately, they just ring fence within your, so you have an account for each of them within your overall accounts. Yeah, I was sure that was the case, but just to be sure.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Great. Rhian, Sam?
Okay, I was just wondering, when things are funded through the charity, like this vehicle, for example, at what point does it become mainstreamed and come out of different budgets, or is it sort of recurrent within a charity? Because, you know, the vehicle's going to die, isn't it, in due course? So is this something that the board centrally takes on and has to apportion it elsewhere, or is some of it sort of recurrent funding?
Thank you, Rhian. That's a great question.
That's a good question.
In terms of that, when for anything below £5,000, the fund advisor is able to take a decision on whether or not it's funded, but they are responsible for ensuring that any revenue funding, ongoing costs are considered before taking a decision to fund.
Yeah.
Over £5,000, not only does the fund advisor need to provide approval, it also needs to go through all of the normal BCUHB channels in terms of getting capital investment group approval, for example, medical devices, etc. So there's huge scrutiny throughout that process, and obviously the finance directors or the relevant finance officer needs to provide assurance as well. It then goes to the Charitable Funds Committee, who I believe are excellent in terms of providing that extra scrutiny, that extra clarification on what exactly is the long-term plan. So what usually happens is that, for example, with the vehicle, £66,000 was given to fund the vehicle initially, on the understanding that that was one-off, and was really a proof of concept. All the revenue funds are, or all the revenue costs rather, are funded through full budget. And when they're at the point of having to look for another vehicle, that will be a decision taken by the service team in terms of how they fund that.
That's great. So there's really detailed consideration in terms how that investment is made, and it's you know, it's not, it is has a view of the whole comprehensive considerations. So that's really good to hear. Mike, Karen.
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed reading this for two reasons. One is it's just a series of lovely acts of kindness. What a great antidote to what's happening in the wider world at the moment. So thank you for giving us a lift. Secondly, the format, the production of that report, I think it's first rate. It's a really nice read, good use of illustrations, very readable. So big well done. And thirdly, I do have a question. But it's about, I noticed in the minutes from last year, there was someone kindly gifted a parcel of land down in Port, I think. And it hadn't been sold. Did that come with restrictions? Does it have to be used for healthcare use, or is it something that's being sat on while the market recovers a little bit? I just wondered, because, you know, could that help with the deficit that's emerged? It might be a tiny parcel of land for all I know, but just wondered.
Do you want? Okay.
I'll come in after you.
Right. Excellent. And shout if I say something that's not quite right, but I think so basically a long time ago, many of you will remember that there was a group in and around Porthmadog that did a significant amount of fundraising because they wanted to see a hospital built in Porthmadog. A decision was taken at the time to build what's now Ashdwen. So the group had already purchased the land because that's where they wanted the initial hospital to be. So they decided some time ago that they wanted to gift the land back to the health board. We received it approximately 5 years ago. Since then, we have looked at selling it. There has been interest, etc. What was decided this year was that it needs to be looked at in terms of whether it's something that the health board could now use to potentially build on now. So where we were previously at a point of looking at selling the land, it's being looked at now as to whether that is the best option. Okay. The land was given to the charity, but it is the estates team and capital team that oversee the land. So it's their decision making that really steers the Charitable Funds Committee on the decisions that are taken around this.
Thank you.
Anything to add, Russ?
So only to say that there are two separate entities, of course. So the charity is very separate to the Exchequer funding. It is one of the key assets that are held within the charity, and the decision will be through trustees around disposition of any use of land. So it'll be a conversation we'll be having as we move forward, but we haven't taken a decision yet. And as I say, it is held as an asset at this time.
Thanks.
Firstly, just to say, having had the joy of receiving and reading last year's report, I didn't think Trustee and Helen and the team could actually top last year's, but this is really, really good and excellent report. What I did want to just flag was something that Russ alluded to before around reviewing the investment strategy.
Yeah.
And I raised, we only invest in ethical investments.
Yes.
But I did raise at the Charity Commission about whether we wanted to consider looking at green and sustainability because of climate change and the impacts on people's health as well. So I've asked for us to consider that when the policy is being reviewed. And then I'll just pick something up briefly with Kirsty after, because I'm not sure whether there's a typo in the report, but it's not for this spotted.
Yeah, and that whole agenda about ethical investment, environmental and other issues that are current in the world, where money is invested is a huge consideration, especially for us at the health board, dare I say. So it's good to have that review, I think. Think to add to that, Russ?
Only to say to our investment advisors, one of the few advisors who effectively enable you to have a defined portfolio in the way that you're not buying a unit trust into a fund, you are buying shares in companies.
Right.
So you can deploy that
Got
particular
sight
constraint
there, yeah.
very clearly.
Yeah.
The only thing to be mindful of that as members is the more constraints. You know, unfortunately, some of these industries are very profitable.
Yes,
So it affects the
Yes.
ability to make a market return.
yes.
But we are very clear, there's certain industries we don't invest in at this time, and we're going to consider whether we can widen that scope as well.
Yeah. Yes, it's, you reminded us that it's not all about, despite our keenness to make sure that the fund grows, but we do it with not just the pure profit in mind. We do it in a responsible way as citizens of the world. You know, I think that's really important. You know, now I have a question. So that's really, as you've heard, really welcome the report, not just the contents, but the way it's been presented is exceptional. So thank you very much, and all the work that takes place, staff and others, is there's quite an enthusiasm for it across the organisation. So it's great, and we can see from the report the difference it is making and the contribution it makes. So it's really valuable, and thanks to the committee and the Red Stewardship in particular for the work I do on a regular basis. And it's good to hear the story, and we've got an opportunity to go into detail about one of those investments now. So back to you, Kirsty, and your colleagues.
Okay, super. So I'm delighted that these two are able to be here today to speak to you about something that was actually funded in 2021. And some of you, I'm sure Nick was there when we took that decision. Were you not? Seemed to be a little hard. But yeah, during 2021, Liana came to us and said, I've got a plan. You're going to hear about that now. The impact that this has had, obviously these guys are going to share now, but what must be said is that the reason why this has worked so well is their passion and enthusiasm, which I know that you're going to feel now. So a huge welcome to you both. I'm so pleased that you could be here today. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So as Kirsty's already introduced herself at us, my name's Liana Shirley.
And I'm Hannah Jones. Thank you so much to the chair and the committee and to our last for inviting us today. And we're here to tell you about our UK's first cardiology diagnostic vehicle. So we just want to briefly just take you back to the beginning. So the van was devised from our home visits that we set up for a response to COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm going to pass it on to Liana to explain a little bit more.
So just tell you a little bit. So prior to COVID, we ran one-stop heart failure diagnostic services across Central and West in community hospitals. And these clinics were run by advanced practitioners, and we took in direct referrals from GPs for patients with suspected heart failure. And the clinics consisted of a one-stop shop. So we'd see them, they'd have a history, examination, echocardiogram, diagnosis, results all on the same day. And the management plan sent back to the GP. And because these were heart failure or suspected heart failure patients, we needed to see these patients within a really tight time scale. So we're looking at two to 6 weeks, depending upon clinical urgency. And they replaced 3 appointments in secondary care. So that was sort of prior to COVID.
So the van has actually allowed us to expand our service. So we're not only assessing patients with suspected heart failure, we're now assessing patients with suspected coronary artery disease and suspected valve disease. And also patients have been diagnosed with valve disease and need a follow-up. But where did this all begin?
So the actual heart failure diagnostic service was really successful, and a clinical audit at the time over 2 years showed that there was a 30% reduction in acute heart failure patients, because we were seeing these patients within a short time frame. We were seeing them, diagnosing them, stopping them from coming into hospital. And in North Wales, we have a vast geography. I mean, BCU is the largest health board in Wales, so, you know, a massive geographical area. And the ethos of the clinics was set up so that patients didn't have to travel any more than 20 to 30 minutes to get a heart failure diagnosis.
So then we were faced with COVID-19. And as you know from all the research that's released at that point, any patients with cardiac disease of any type were at high risk of mortality if they contracted COVID-19. Then we found ourselves in a situation of all the hospitals obviously needed to focus on COVID-19. The outpatient hospitals were turned more into beds for that treatment. And myself and Liana found ourselves in the possible situation of where do we see our patients? These are in urgent need of care, but we have nowhere to see them. So after a couple of weeks of doing some triage phone calls with patients, we thought we can't do this anymore. We need to think outside the box. We need to really think dynamically and quickly and try and really make sure we can access these patients that need urgent health care. So we developed our home visits and we started them in April 2020.
So from the first initial lockdown, so we're talking first 5 months from April to September, we actually carried out approximately 80 home visits across the whole of North Wales, which was really hard work. And we were seeing some really sick patients because if you remember at the time, patients weren't going to see their GPs and it was only the really sick ones that were actually going and seeing the GPs. So the patients that we were faced with were really poorly. And we estimate at that time, looking at the presentation, that we probably saved at least 10 hospital admissions in those first 5 months. And if you think, so the British Heart Foundation roughly says a hospital admission from heart failure is about £4,000. We were looking at a cost saving of about 40,000. But more importantly, I know we talk about cost, but more importantly, we stopped those patients from coming into hospital when COVID numbers were high. Okay. But it wasn't sustainable. You know, we couldn't sustain this. If you cast your mind back to 2020, it was really, really hot. And it was one of those arduous weeks when we were a hot, sweaty mess in plastic. Where my husband threw in an offhand remark and went, do you know what you ladies need? You need a van. So it was like, that's a really good idea. But although I credit him with the idea, we did all the hard work.
So we received the quote for the vehicle, and although it seemed a substantial amount of money, as Leanne said, we'd already seen that we'd hopefully prevent these 10 unplanned hospital admissions. So we felt this was really important that we kind of carried on with this idea. So we wanted to make sure this was a really sustainable addition to our service and really enhanced and allowed us to develop service from the pandemic and beyond. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen with the pandemic, but this needs to be beyond that. So we sat with the people that built the van and we were very careful in going through exactly what our needs are. So we've got electric hookup, we've got a generator. So this van is so versatile, it can go anywhere. There is no restrictions. And as Leanne said, with the vast BCUHB rural location, this is just so easy. We just pull up and we can carry out our full clinic anywhere we want to.
So this van has been transformational for our service. So we've not only been able to expand our heart failure diagnostic service, but we've actually taken on additional clinics as well. So we're now seeing patients with suspected valve disease, again on a one-stop basis. So we're replacing multiple appointments in secondary care, which is great for these patients and getting them seen quickly. And it undoubtedly eases the burden on secondary care. We're not restricted by room availability, so we can see where our highest numbers are depending on geography, and we can rock up in a car park or GP surgery car park or community hospital and do a clinic. So we can respond dynamically to where the highest waiters are.
So with this expansion service, we've estimated from all the information we've collected that we've prevented 48 hospital admissions in 2023, which is a huge cost saving. But I think it's really important to take focus more towards patient satisfaction. We get such good feedback from patients that they need to be able to access this care and feel safer as well with the reaction post-COVID and the fear, because they're isolated in a van, they can walk straight from their car. And we're saving multiple hospital appointments, which can be very difficult for the elderly to attend to. And also we're ensuring swift treatment. We are finding those patients with, severe heart problems, and we're treating them and trying to prevent as many hospital admissions as we can.
So the press coverage for this van has been fantastic. So we've been in local newspaper, we've been in on ITV Wales News, disciplines within BCU, but also other health boards in Wales, trusts in England and Scotland have all contacted us wanting to emulate the service, which is great. I'm also aware that Audiology have got a delivery of their own van in the next few months, which they were one of the people, the first lot of people that were actually chatting to me in the beginning. And we were really proud to have won as well the NHS Wales Awards in 2022 for our category, and our patients love it. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to just play you a short patient story. And Peggy's words are really powerful. Peggy is lovely, and her words are really powerful. And it's the care of our patients that have really been the driving force behind this van and behind the continued care. And they should be listened to because they're the most important people in BCUHB. And we endeavour to continue to develop and drive a gold standard service. So, Peggy.
We're going to hear a short patient story now. Peggy lives on Anglesey in North Wales, and during the lockdown of 2020, she became very unwell. Due to the nationwide pandemic response, Peggy was struggling to access health services, as outpatient services were restricted to enable more capacity for the COVID response. The Community Cardiology Diagnostic Service recognised the risks faced by patients like Peggy, and so began home visits to continue to support these vulnerable patients. On her home visit, Peggy was found to have severe heart failure, and in fact, it was so severe that she needed urgent interventions that would prove to be life-saving. Peggy was also among the first patients to benefit from a follow-up appointment in the Community Cardiology Diagnostic Vehicle, and this is her story.
My name is Peggy Parry, and I am 88 years old, and I became very unwell during the pandemic, and I couldn't go to a hospital, really, and the girls came in all dressed up, gave me a heart scan, and I was bad, really bad. So they tell me now. I've had a pacemaker. I had to go to Liverpool, to Broad Green, and I had a pacemaker and a tabby. And it was 8 in this thing. So I'm extremely lucky to be alive. Only for the girls, I wouldn't be here. And their visit to start the ball rolling, because it was a very difficult time, really, with the pandemic. I had a pacemaker and a tabby, and when I came home, I was invited for a scan, and I was probably the first one to use this wonderful little van for a heart scan. And I went to drive myself there, it wasn't too far. And the van is accessible to all people, and it's not crammed at all inside, plenty of room.
Did you feel like you were in the back of a van?
No, not at all, not at all. It could be a room in the hospital. You couldn't tell the difference, really.
Peggy, when you came for your appointment to be seen in the van, tell me about how that went.
Well, I drove to Holyhead, and I parked my car next to the van, more or less. And the lady came out and said, "Are you Peggy?" And I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Well, come in now, because I'm waiting for you." And that was handy. I didn't have to go into the hospital. I've had COVID anyway, so I wasn't aware that you could have it more than once, but you can more than once. So yes, it was very handy.
So can you see the benefits of this van?
Oh,
with other things?
Definitely. You could, with sight or with anything that's diabetes even, it would be absolutely, I think it's the thing of the future, really.
You wouldn't mind turning up to other appointments in the back of a van?
Not at all, not at all. Could be put to a lot of uses. You could take it anywhere, because Wales is a vast, vast country. It's a small country as far as other people think. But in size, when you go down to Carnarvonshire and it's out in the wilds for people to travel to start off with. And you could take your little van and be anywhere for convenience, really. You know, when you go down to Porthmadog and Mid Wales, it's a big country and very wild, really. So you could take it nearer the people that need you. And instead of the people travelling to clinics, you think of people travelling from Pwllheli down to Ysbyty Gwynedd. It's far for them to come, especially if they're not well, you know, and you can be on the spot and they can travel maybe from the village down to where you are, and it would solve a lot of the problems, I think. And I'm extremely grateful for their help. Otherwise, I would be here. So sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We've got the van with us today. And we can introduce you to our van at some point later.
Well, that's really great to see the way you highlighted the investment and the service and the difference it made. Particularly interested in the way that serves rural areas and improves access to health services, which is a great thing, and it's one of the challenges we face at the health board, of course. So that's great. Rhian,
Yeah, just two little things. One, how did Peggy get referred into this home and then van in the first place? Who saw her, or who got her into that system?
So the referrals that we take are direct from GPs. So the patients would go to their GPs, the GPs would suspect heart failure and then refer them to our service.
I was just thinking at that time, people weren't seeing their GPs, were they? So that was
Very
just a
few.
basic
Yeah,
question.
there were, as we said, the patients that did actually go to see their GPs, because people were avoiding going to them, seeking help. The ones that did actually go were usually the sickest ones. So when we were seeing people on home visits, they were really poorly.
Right, thank you. And then my second one, it's really to Carol. If this works, are we rolling this sort of approach to community stuff, library stuff? Have we got a programme for this for the future?
Yeah, good point. And the whole agenda of access to services and how we reach out to rural areas in particular. Can we work with others, not necessarily, you know, having a heart examination in the library van, but you know, there is something about the whole access to services in rural areas, not just
Thinking, you know, it doesn't have to. Does it have to come through our LAS?
Yeah.
Is the point really? Are we trying to mainstream that sort of provision?
Good point. And before I get Kirsten Carroll to come in, I've got to say quite honestly, it's the first I've heard of this. In the middle of everything else that's going on, and that's probably my fault. Fault of no one, but you know, I'd really like to highlight it if we can in some shape or form, so that people are aware of it, and the fact that it was the first in the UK is great. So, right, we've got others who want to come in, including Claire and Jane, and then I'll get you to come back at the end then, Kirsty.
Yeah, there's only a comment just to say, I think the way you described your absolute commitment to the patients and how you were looking for how you could keep delivering your service in the most difficult circumstances, other than thinking we can't do our jobs, what we're going to do here. I think that's just such a fantastic example for us of some of the fantastic staff we've got in Betsy who are here fundamentally to care for the people of North Wales. So it's just really good to see it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Jane?
Just to reiterate an inspirational story and audiology looking to have a bold
Yeah,
I'm
no,
very
it's
sick.
Right, so Kirsty, then we'll have Carol to wrap up on this. Diolch yn fawr.
Super. I was just going to say what Jane said really. So thank you to everybody in the room from the Charitable Funds Committee, because about 2 months ago, it was agreed that audiology would have a similar fan as well. I must say the costs have gone up quite considerably over the past 2 years. But we are really looking forward to it. We've got about 10 weeks.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, it's been kitted out now. So
Thank you. And just to also very quickly point out that we do have Mike over here from the Rotarians in Llandudno, who I was meeting earlier. He popped down and I suggested that he quickly just jump in the van to take a look. And he's now brought his wife down to see the girls as well today. So huge thank you. And Mike and his group, just very quickly, they last year, end of last year, they did something that we say is blooming marvellous. They planted 7,000 daffodil bulbs in Llandudno. So we were meeting to show gratitude for that. So a huge on behalf of us all. Thank you.
Great. Right, Carol, any points?
Well, what a great meeting, actually, both the report and, you know, we said that earlier, but to bring to life the work of the charity and see the impact. So isn't Peggy fabulous, by the way? But that's great. But, you know, this is about being creative, with the money that people give us to improve the lives of other people. That's what it's all about. And actually, if we're able to use the money to bring health services closer to people, then all the better. On the vehicles, I won't tell you how much a dental unit in a van costs, but it's a lot more than, but they're the sorts of things. We can be taking dental vans out. We've got a motorhome already, I discovered, in Wrexham. And this is our team that support people who often don't have a place to live, but maybe use substances or have difficult environments, and they take the motorhome to places which tries to destigmatize, accessing healthcare services. So I thought that was brilliant as well. So lots of innovation and absolutely fantastic for the future. And I'm thinking about things like, how do we increase access and importantly, find people who perhaps wouldn't have accessed services before? So, and just on cardiology, my understanding, the rates go down post-COVID, so don't go anywhere yet. Plenty of work for you.
And that,
well done.
That general point about, we set up our services to say to people, right, here we are, come and get us. Actually, we're reversing it. We're going to people. And there's something about that in general, I think, particularly those people who we know we need to try and encourage them to access services. We need to go to them where they are, not sit back and just wait for people to arrive somehow. So it's really great development, and I think there is something for us to consider there about the way we establish our services and improve access. So
space is such a premium as well.
Yes.
Hospitals.
Yeah, absolutely.
It ticks all the boxes,
Great. Diolch yn fawr iawn, and llongyfarchiadau ar y gwaith, da iawn. Diolchgar iawn. Reit. A gobeithio falle fydd yna gyfle i fynd i'r ban nes ymlaen. Yr eitem nesaf ydy unrhyw mater arall. Does na ddim mater arall wedi dod i'n sylw i. Y cyfarfod nesaf, cyfarfod blynyddol, di mis Ionawr nesaf. Os dwi'n iawn, mis Ionawr nesaf. Wedyn falle bod hwnna newid, dwi'n siŵr. Russ, on that point.
Diolch, yes, thank you, Chair. So it was only to say, I think that we should meet far more regularly than that. As a board of trustees, we have an obligation to the charity as well as the Exchequer and the Health Board. And there's lots of this innovation we can share and stimulate some more ideas that can bring forward further innovation as well. So I'll be looking to change that next meeting, and we'll link in with the governance section to make sure that it's appropriate, but build more meetings in than an annual basis.
Okay, come up with a cunning plan then. Yeah, great. And more opportunity to learn of what's happening with the investment and so on. That would be really welcome, I think. Karen, finally.
So just to add to that, 'cause, those of us who sit on the charitable committee and pass these grants and approve them and whatever, you know, you see the ideas, but then you don't see the outcome. And obviously I wasn't around for that investment, but amazing, and it'd be great to see a lot more.
Yes, and that's maybe something for the committee could consider to show bach o feddwl ac falle weld beth bynnag. Okay, ardderchog, diolch yn iawn. So dyna ddiwedd y cyfarfod, nawn ni edrych mlaen weld pryd mae'r cyfarfod nesaf. Diolch eto am y gwaith a gobeithio fydd yn amser i ni fynd i weld ar fan ymhen chdi. Diolch yn galon, dymu'n hwnna i chi. Right, so that's the end of business. Felly dyna ddiwedd cyfarfod cyhoeddus am heddiw. Dwi'n cynnig yn bod ni'n mynd i sesiwn breifat allan o was a cyhoedd, fel o blaid yn ysgol.